Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Harrisburg City Council. I want to welcome everybody back from their happy Thanksgiving and wish that everybody's was enjoyable. This is a legislative session, Tuesday, November 27, 2018. I'm calling this meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. Mr. Petrosky, please do the roll call.
Mr. Allett? Present. Ms. Bowers?
Present.
Ms. Daniels?
Here.
Ms. Green?
Present.
Mr. Madsen?
Here.
Mr. Majors?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Present. Thank you, Mr. Petrosky. Moving on to the invocation, Mr. Madsen.
Yes, and good evening. Unfortunately, over the weekend, we had a few passings in the community. Special thoughts and prayers to the Venable family, the Santiago family, and the two lives that were lost tragically in the fire at Riverview Manor. On a personal note, I was co-workers with Julian, the woman that had passed, and she was a fine and good person and worked for the Commonwealth and was a fine public servant, so it was tragic to hear about her passing over the weekend. So, moment of silence for the losses. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Madsen. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Allett.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Allett. Moving on to, we just have a short presentation or statement by our Commissioner, Tom Carter.
Thank you, Madam President, honorable City Council members. There's been a lot of speculation, a lot of talking going on about the incident that happened this past Sunday involving Kobe Santiago and two other juvenile males. To sort of highlight some of the incident for you, I am not going to take any questions from anybody, but I do feel that I owe an explanation to this honorable body. About 11:35 hours, AM, my officers received a dispatch for a stolen vehicle. They responded to the area that the vehicle was last seen in. They spotted the vehicle. They started following said vehicle. They followed said vehicle for a couple minutes through Bellevue Park. When the operator of the stolen vehicle committed a violation, my officer hit the lights and the sirens. The vehicle took off at a rate of speed and gradually increased that speed. My officers followed the vehicle for approximately 4 minutes until they were told to cease following the vehicle. The vehicle still proceeded at a high rate of speed. My officers turned off the lights and the sirens, pulled to the side, and the vehicle proceeded down Brookwood Street at a high rate of speed. 25th and Brookwood came to a dip in the road. That dip in the road launched that vehicle, and the young man behind the wheel operating the vehicle lost control of the vehicle and hit and smashed into a tree. Now, there's a lot of talk out there that my officers rammed the car. There was no such ramming. We have dash cam video from two vehicles that were following this vehicle. Yes, speeds did exceed the maximum speed limit for a couple seconds twice, but that's it. But for the most part, it was a low speed following of this vehicle until the vehicle crashed. I believe from the impact of the vehicle crash from where the officer stopped at was about 2 city blocks. The officer that was following the vehicle did not even see the vehicle crash. After the vehicle crashed, my officers arrived on scene. They tried to render first aid to the victims of the vehicle. They called medical units out. As you know, we had departments from our fire department, from Progress Fire Hall, from other agencies that rendered first aid, that had to cut the people out the car. We have 2 young men, one in Hershey Medical Center, another one in another nearby hospital, still receiving medical treatment for the injuries. It's unfortunate that Mr. Santiago passed away. My condolences to the Santiago family. I have reached out to all three families. We have had conversation back and forth through a mutual party. If there's any questions, that mutual party is here to give account of the conversation.
Okay. Okay, council members? Questions? Okay, thank you, Chief.
I believe that Mr. Santiago's services will be Saturday. Again, you know, we want to give our condolences to the Santiago family. And if there's anything that my police agency can do for either of the families, you know, we'll be more than happy to. It's an unfortunate situation, but we are investigating this here. And when the investigation is done, we will have more information to release to this honorable City Council committee.
Well, thank you, Chief. We'll wait for the investigation and hear your report.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications, it's presentation of the proposed 2019 budget by Mayor Papafus.
Okay. Down to this mic here. All right, good evening, City Council, members of the public.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me to present our 2019 budget. What I'd like to do is walk you through a series of slides. They are modeled on previous budget presentations from years past. And that will, I should note that we've also given you a copy electronically. You should all have that in your folders and hard copies as well. And the budget this year now features in color new organizational charts. So everything that you're seeing in the presentation will also be in the budget when it comes to organization. So there's plenty to review. So let's get going. As in past years, we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that we have a balanced budget, and we're going to go over basic revenue and expenditure highlights. And this year, it's really all about maintaining a critical capacity. I believe the city has finally rebuilt itself to a level that is both sustainable and able to address the needs of the city. And so you will find there's not much in the way of new proposals in this budget, at least when it comes to capacity. But we are doing some reorganization, and we will talk about that tonight. We'll talk a little bit about our debt management initiatives and give you a brief update on some of the major points there. And then we'll walk through the capital improvement projects, including some color slides about transportation projects that we have planned for next year. And then we'll touch on the next steps and look forward to meeting with you again to address all of your questions. So thank you. The first slide, balancing the budget, basically compares revenues and expenditures both for operating and capital budget for 2019 versus 2018. And the first thing you're going to see is that we are actually proposing an operating budget which is slightly less, about $700,000 less than it was in 2018. And we're proposing spending on capital, again, a budget which is slightly less, a little more than $500,000 less in capital than in 2019. Part of the reason for that is, and the reason that you'll see that revenue projections are down by a similar amount between 2018 and 2019, is that last year there was, I'm going to remind council, there was a one-time fund transfer that occurred. It was proceeds from an old PIB loan that was cleared out, and so that isn't duplicated again this year. And also, in the upcoming year, our COPS grant will be ending. So that's a loss of revenue there. It's about $170,000 a year. Obviously, the officers are staying, but we are now going to be fully funding them ourselves. That explains, in a nutshell, some of the differences. But basically, we've reached a point where we are at a sustainable level, a level that is balanced, and a level which is commensurate, in which expenditures are commensurate with the revenues that are coming in. Looking at the revenue highlights for a moment, it's very pleasing to say that revenues are up across the board, with the only exception being property taxes. If you look at what's being budgeted for property taxes in 2019, you'll see that there is a slight decline in what was budgeted in years past. That is primarily due to something that we haven't really talked about, but we can talk about at some point in the future. There is currently litigation pending with the railroads regarding the amount of property taxes they will pay. This is something which affects not only Harrisburg, but the school district, other surrounding municipalities, really. And we're working with all of them in Dauphin County on a sort of united tax appeal approach. But to be prudent, since they've essentially stopped paying, we're revising our estimates downward by about $300,000 just based on that railroad dispute for what would be expected for 2019. Leaving that aside, everything else is estimated to go up. And I should note that our estimations are all in compliance and pretty much equal to those of the Act 47 coordinator and in the projections that were put together as part of the Act 47 plan. So there's no surprises here, but you'll notice that EIT is projected to increase, LST is expected to increase. Those are strong signs because they show that not only are more people working in the city of Harrisburg, but more people are earning more money in the city of Harrisburg, and that is a good, strong sign. Business taxes are expected to increase. Departmental fines and licenses all expected to increase. And I wanted to say something very specifically about parking, because we haven't really discussed too much of that recently. Although I know that the parking group is planning to get together sometime, I think, in the new year. But 2019 is, and council should be aware, is going to be the last year of our sort of elevated parking payments. As you'll see, we're expecting almost $3.5 million. After 2019, it drops down considerably. It goes down by about $1.2 million less, and it sort of stays at that level for the duration of the deal. The parking payments were heavily weighted in the initial transaction in the earlier years. Part of that is because also next year we will no longer have to continue to make payments to the suburban municipalities as part of the settlement that we had with them regarding improper billing of water and sewer charges. And so basically we'll have to spend about $750,000 less in settlements. We'll be getting about 1.2 less in parking. That's about $500,000 that we are looking to hopefully make up through the slowly increasing revenues across the board. So just wanted to make you aware of that. Also, as an update on parking, you should know that due to a settlement with the parking folks, they have released pretty much our full payments for 2017 and 2018, ending a dispute there. And we have also received reassurances from the parking system that they will not push to raise meter revenues in 2019. So all that, I think, is good news for city ratepayers. If we go over to expenditures, you'll see that really we are pretty much flat in personnel. Interestingly, you see that we continue to see something of a savings in healthcare, while we are seeing some growth that sort of levels that out in pension expenses. That's an interesting contrast because, as you know, we're down at least 14 police officers. So the more police officers you have, the less, I mean, the more people paying into your pension system. But then again, the more you might be paying in healthcare. So there's sort of one up, one down, but they level off. And then a note about the debt service. So the debt service that we are proposing to pay this year, as we proposed to pay last year, includes the full payment on the MBAC liability and includes not borrowing against it as was originally contemplated in the Strong Plan. So that's that extra $2 million a year payment that we are paying up front, saving, excuse me, on interest costs in the long term. That debt service number, that big number, that almost $10 million number, that continues for 4 more years. And it's and that's the general obligation debt, not to be confused with the settlement, AMBAC settlement liability. That's one of the reasons that the 5-year act, which was just established for Harrisburg, is a very positive thing, because it gets us out beyond the expiration of that debt service. So after 4 years, that number will go away. It will be replaced by a much smaller number, and we'll see a savings for the city. All right, now, that is a big graph that is a little hard to read on the screen, but it gives you a flavor of what you will see in your budget books and in each of the divisions and the departments. We are doing some basic reorganization for the city, I think long overdue. I was telling one of you today that I think we still have on the books a budget or a department of incineration. Obviously, it needed to be updated and has to be for some time. We're proposing 7 departments that match the 7 committees that City Council chairs. Most of them are the exact same name, and basically engineering is merging with community and economic development, and facilities is merging with Parks and Rec, but by and large, it's 7 departments matching the 7 of you. What we have done is we've basically not replaced our community and economic development director in Jackie Parker, and we've taken the sort of 4 bureaus that were under her, and we've spread them out and given different responsibilities. So previously under economic development included planning, which is now in this new Department of Engineering and Development. It included business development, which is now under the Department of Administration. It included building and housing, which is really its own department, although we won't be discussing it in the budget because that is federally funded, as you know. And it included Parks and Rec, which is now its own department and merging with facilities. So as you look at the budget, I think you can take a deep dive into all the different organizational charts. I'm going to show you one more, but not all of them. The other nice thing about them is they have all management employees listed, and they have the total number of union workers in each department listed by position. So you can really take a deep dive into who's working and where they're working and what the chain of command is in all the departments. As I said at the outset, it's about maintaining critical capacity. It's not about continuing to build or grow. From especially a personnel standpoint, we've done a lot of that in past years, but we've got to a point where we now have a critical mass and the necessary mass. So we're not proposing any new union positions. We are proposing 2 new management positions, which I'll tell you about in a moment, but they pay for themselves. But we are proposing reorganizing a handful of union positions. So we have basically 5 positions which we're proposing changing, eliminating, but then replacing with new union positions. We've explained this to ASME in our labor management meeting, and they're on board with the changes. I'll note that the paralegal, which we're proposing, and the motor equipment operators, which service our trash accounts, are both positions that bring revenue into the city, and that's a positive thing. I'll also note that because we have a new fleet of vehicles, and we'll see this when we talk about the capital expenditure accounts, but we have all these new vehicles. We need higher skilled mechanics, and so we're proposing upgrading some of our higher skilled mechanics and eliminating some of the lower skilled mechanics as a means of basically maintaining our current fleet. But it is a wash in terms of overall costs and overall numbers for the city. It's just a means of sort of maximizing our potential. On the management side, we are doing a little bit of reorganizing, but they aren't, we have 4 new positions, but we're eliminating 4 other positions or changing. So, and that chart is basically a wash as well. So we're eliminating the DCED director, which was a high salaried position, but we are proposing creating a new project management manager position that will work within that Department of Engineering and Development. Somebody who can manage, say, the Mulder Square project or manage other projects and assist Wayne Martin, the city engineer, but not serve in a directorial capacity, so that's a savings. On the IT side, we are looking to take up a recommendation that actually came out of a report issued by Harrisburg University this past year. Our deputy director of IT was actually in the class, and the focus is to basically have within IT a GIS administrator who can assist all departments and sort of centralize our use. And we're basically going to eliminate an IDMS. It should be IDMS programmer, which is basically an old mainframe programmer, and we don't necessarily need that position as much anymore. In HR, we're planning to basically eliminate the background investigator position, but create an HR specialist position. We can talk more about that when we talk about HR, but it's sort of a wash. And then finally, we're taking an arborist, and we're suggesting moving the arborist to part-time. Sort of like our recycling manager is also a part-time position. There is a retired state arborist who's very interested in assisting the city and would be willing to work part-time. So it's a good way of filling the position and maybe saving a little bit of money. And instead, we're going to reprogram that into having a janitorial supervisor, which is going to help us keep our buildings clean and I think ultimately help us with the health, safety, and welfare of all of our employees. We are, however, proposing 2 new positions, and this is really it for the whole budget, just 2. And we took the position that we weren't going to propose anything that we couldn't pay for with savings. So the 2 positions are both within this new Department of Parks, Rec, and Facilities. They're basically mechanical equipment professionals or people that can keep the city from having to outsource a lot of its service contracts. And that list there is just a glance of some of the things that we think we can avoid paying or outsourcing by having the skilled people actually on staff. So that includes certain HVAC repairs, certain plumbing repairs, certain building related matters, minor building, even pest control. We think we can do in-house if we have the right people. We estimate, and you can drill down on this when we have our budget hearings. We estimate that we'll save at least $500,000, which is enough to pay for those positions over the course of the next 5 years. And our new facilities manager, Dave Baker, has a lot of thoughts on how not only can we better maintain our facilities, but how we can sort of maximize our return on our city tax dollars. So that's it from basically from a personnel standpoint. I promised you only one more org chart, although there are a lot in the budget, and they were fun to put together and really interesting. But this shows basically how the Parks and Rec and Facilities Department would work now. Currently, our Parks Maintenance and our Parks and Rec are in separate departments, which has never really made a lot of sense. And it sometimes leads to different priorities and not being in sync as much. And we're proposing sort of bringing them together under one umbrella. Sort of having also under that umbrella our facilities maintenance, which is basically our custodians, and then these highly specialized technical folks that are up at the top of the graph, the 2 new positions. The part of the thought here is that we have invested millions of dollars into our parks over the past year, and if not, and longer, especially over the past year, and we're going to be investing even more as we move forward. So these are investments that we need to maintain and protect, much like we've invested and we've started investing in our building here and in the public safety building. We're putting in a new skylight, almost done, I think, a new roof for the public safety building. Millions of dollars. We need to have a facilities maintenance plan that properly takes care of those investments. So we're going to treat our parks like we're going to treat our buildings, which is basically as long-term investments that serve the public, and they'll all be gathered together under this new umbrella. When it comes to debt management, I just wanted to talk once again a little bit about AMBAC, because I know the council is very interested in paying off our what is called the sort of AMBAC settlement liability. I talked about how we have 4 more years of our general obligation payments. Those bonds are not callable. They can't be paid off in advance. They are what they are. But then we have, after the next 4 years, we have about $21 million as a outstanding liability which is owed to AMBAC. And that is what we are trying to negotiate some sort of a payment on. We've been in negotiations with AMBAC for months. At one point, they sort of took the position that they wanted to wait and see what the state did. And it is my understanding that you're going to have Marathon, who is our capital advisors, in on December 4th to present to you on what they've been doing and to answer your questions. So I won't steal all of their thunder, but the point is the negotiations with AMBAC are very much ongoing, and the goal is to see if we can work out some sort of a payment plan on that outstanding liability, which will reduce those obligations that the city will owe. And that is a conversation that I think is important to have, but also I think we can have in conjunction with our new 5-year plan that we're going to be developing with your help in the spring and presenting with the new authority, Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority, that is going to be working with Harrisburg. So Marathon will be in December 4th, and we are very much still looking to plan some sort of a payment plan with AMBAC. All right, we are now going to take a moment and talk about some of the capital projects, which I think will interest you and will interest the public. I don't think you're going to find anything on this list that is remotely surprising or that you haven't heard about or don't already know about. But it is the bulk. It is a lot of money that we are proposing spending on capital, and we want to sort of walk through and highlight some of them. I'll start just in IT and say that I mentioned that Harrisburg University study, and one of the conclusions of the study was, and we did already know this to be fair, but they really have emphasized it, we have got to deal with this issue of disaster recovery and what we would do in an emergency if we were to have a fire or a flood or some sort of catastrophic event. We need to create basically an off-site redundant data center which can basically duplicate what we have here. That is really the phase that needs to happen next year, and we are proposing doing that. This is separate from the migration away from the mainframe, but it is an important first step. And you should also know that we are hopefully we have applied for a gaming grant. That's why it says gaming grant in parentheses to help cover this as part of the Dauphin County gaming grant process, and we'll be going before them in December. It's a priority for the system whether or not we get the gaming grant or not, but it is something that we've asked for support from Dauphin County for. So that's the main IT initiative. There's some other things like workflow and imaging software, which will benefit all departments and I think be a positive. As we go next, we hit public safety, and we're continuing with the radios. You remember we spent over almost $1 million in radios last year. We're now finishing up the radio purchase. That's another almost $500,000 to bring all the radios and finish that project up to speed. We're also continuing to buy patrol vehicles, and in this case, we're adding a transport van. And I should note to you that basically that's the sort of thing, those vehicles are going to be continuing expense each year. We've got to continue to buy police cars. Also of note, we did not spend in last year the money that we had proposed for body cameras. We've upped the estimate now. We're at about $150,000. That RFP is going to be issued in December, and we are looking to. We will definitely implement the cameras in the new year, but we did revise that projection upward, and that's also an example of some of the things in last year's capital budget we didn't actually spend. They were either put on hold or frozen, or we just didn't quite get around to it. And so the ones that weren't completed, we've either moved to 2019 or eliminated, and that's one that we actually moved and upped the price on. We should mention in the Bureau of Fire as well, because that's a major commitment. We're proposing replacing 2 major pieces of equipment that Chief Enterline can better explain the age and need for, but It's part of the fleet rotation plan for fire. We want to put them, both Tower 1 and Squad 8, on 10-year, basically, lease purchase agreements. So we pay them over the course of a decade at a rate of maybe $150,000 a year. But when you see that, you're going to see that as a number that's going to continue then for a decade. Engineering and planning, I'll make brief mention of the bucket truck. One of the reasons that it's hard to replace all those poles on Front Street, and I'm told we lose about 10 to 12 of those a year from traffic accidents, is because currently the bucket trucks that we have aren't strong enough or big enough to, you have to rent a separate apparatus or crane to lift the poles. This will allow those to go up sooner. They'll allow us to deal with streetlights better, as well as trees. So that's something that can be shared with Parks Maintenance. It's basically a much higher capacity truck that will allow us to better deal with our maintenance issues. And then I want to call your attention under vehicle management to the VMC vehicle leasing program. Last year that was $160,000. This year it's $320,000 because, again, that's a 5-year. Whenever we agree to do this, it's a 5-year sort of payment plan, and we agreed to update the beginnings of the fleet last year. We're going to be doing another round of cards this year. So this is basically the non-police and heavy equipment fleet. The rest of the cars that are used for, you name it, codes inspectors or others at the city. In neighborhood services, probably the biggest thing that got pushed from one year to the next is still the money for the acquisition of the Public Works building. The Law Bureau can give you an update on that, but we would look to conclude the eminent domain proceedings in 2019, so we've got that fully budgeted. The main new purchase for Public Works, their top priority for 2019, is what they're calling tri-axle trucks. They need 2 of them. We've got 2 currently, but they're both very old. And these are the trucks that allow us to haul leaves, haul snow, haul demolition waste, and haul, for instance, illegal dumping. So they're basically big trucks used for hauling. If you look at the rest of the capital projects for Public Works, you'll see that we're on different lease plans and at different stages. So we're at year 3 of 5 for our refuse trucks, for our big sanitation packers. So that'll be more than halfway paid off by this time, at the end of next year. We're at year 2 of 5 for the dump trucks and the front end loaders. So I guess theoretically would be 1 at 5 for the new triaxle once they were purchased. And then we're rounding out, we're at years 4 of 5 for the backhoe and skid loader and 5 of 5 for the asphalt paver. So we've got Public Works on a good rotation now, a good 5-year rotation for equipment, with certain things coming off and other things going on. And we can talk more about it when we drill down on that budget. So now we are on transportation, and there are a lot of transportation asks, a couple $1 million. Most of these I think you know about. But I think rather than just show all those numbers and go down that, I'm going to go to the next slide, which I find to be a very useful slide, and I hope you'll find it to be a useful slide, and the public will find it to be a useful slide, because this is what we are actually going to do in 2019 in terms of major transportation projects in the city. So we are going to finish 3rd Street. Yes, we had hoped to finish 3rd Street this year. It didn't happen, but it will be finished next year. So residents and businesses and everyone can expect that project to conclude in 2019. We are also probably going to conclude the South Harrisburg paving project in 2019, although they have till 2020 to complete it under the contract. They are looking at a very aggressive schedule, and that would be, I'm going to show you a map in a minute, but that will be under construction as well. So 3rd Street will be under construction. The South Harrisburg paving project will be under construction. Also beginning in 2019 will be the North 7th Street project, which leads in front of the FIA and going all the way to the federal courthouse. To be planned now to be completed will be the Mulder Square project in 2019. I've got some slides to show you of those highlights as well. Also completed next year, by the end of next summer, this is a big deal, is that whole Riverwalk that we received the $1 million+ grant for, which is very exciting. We also plan to launch our State Street Rapid Response in the spring of 2019. Still in negotiations with PennDOT about it, but that is our hope for launch time. So look at all these things that are going to be happening as it starts to warm up. We will also be doing the Hearst Street Accessibility Route Project and finishing the Clay Street project, which has already begun but will be completed in 2019. So all of those things will be under construction next year. Just a couple slides for your benefit and the public's benefit, because I've been asked these questions. So asked where exactly is the South Harrisburg paving project, which you all have discussed and voted on. That's a slide which basically shows where the 10,000 plus square footage of streets which are being paved are, and it's 118 ADA ramps. If you start adding up the number of ADA ramps for each of these projects, it's a pretty extraordinary number that's long overdue, but beginning to move the city towards a much more compliant city when it comes to ADA accessibility. Also, in addition to South Harrisburg, I promised you an image of 7th Street, and there it is. This is exciting. It's going to have our first partially protected two-way cycle track, which is going to run along the FIA side of the street. It's going to have raised crosswalks and the elimination of that mid-street parking. All those meters that are in the middle of the street currently should make it a lot safer for people to cross the street. It is basically going to calm traffic and provide better accessibility with our first our first roundabout, which it may end up being our second roundabout, because I think the one in Mulder Square is going to be constructed first, but it will be under construction next year, and that is going to be really exciting turn events, especially as the federal courthouse and the archives really get underway in full swing. I mentioned the other roundabout, and there it is at Mulder Square, right at the corner, right past the watering trough. That will be completed next year. It includes the green alley, if you recall, a new plaza design, new street trees, as well as the end of the cul-de-sac, which currently is a magnet for illegal dumping near the YWCA, and a new ADA accessible ramp walkway that eliminates those stairs there and allows people basically to make their way down to Cameron Street. Remember, that is the RCAP project that we got state funding for. At least that's the city's portion of it. Had some very good public meetings on that, and if you haven't, probably everyone on council has been up recently, but if the public hasn't all been up to that intersection to see the incredible progress that's been made with the housing authority's construction of their new affordable housing units, it's well worth the look. So that project is going to move and really accelerate over the course of next year. Already underway, because that's a recent picture from the last, right before it snowed, right as we were preparing the budget, that is the Riverwalk. And as you recall, we replaced all the concrete on the upper level of the Riverwalk in Shipoke up until about right there, which is near the railroad bridge and the Passage to India restaurant and the ramp upwards. And that's a little connector piece. And they're working on doing the connector piece this year up to the railroad bridge, and then next year they'll do the whole final strip of the walk from basically from Shipoke all the way to Maclay Street. It's going to be really, really exciting. And the Hearst Street accessibility route, that is hard to see, but I'll summarize some of the highlights of Hearst Street. You know this because you've already approved it, but these are, now we're spending the money, we're going to actually see it. We're going to see new sidewalk along Sunshine Park, which is really good for pedestrians, new crosswalks, 42 new ADA ramps, new ADA compliant bus stops, and real improvements to certain intersections, basically all the way from Cameron Street to 15th Street. So it's something to be very, very excited about. And you can, in your booklets, you can look and see those maps in greater detail. Now we're almost done, but last year we did something new, and so I wanted to report back to you. Last year, at Council's request, we included a couple of slides. One was on our demo list and our priority demo projects, and the other was on our internal paving projects, the alleys. If you recall Dave West talking about the alleys that we were internally planning to pave in 2018. I'm pleased to say we followed that to a T, and we were successful in paving each of those alleys and small projects. That's probably more detail than you want, but it's a report on what we did and what it cost in terms of material, and that is the work that the city's own highway team performed in 2018. And then the next slide will tell you what alleys and whatnot are being proposed for 2019. As you recall, a lot of our alleys, which we're sort of separating from the major streets, were horrible states of neglect, very, very difficult for trash trucks to get through. And slowly but surely, we have a comprehensive plan to pave all of them via Public Works. And that is the list, and you can drill down on that and ask questions of Public Works when you see them next. And then also, I am pleased to report that we had a very, very good year with regard to demolition, meaning we demolished more properties than we had in any previous year of my administration. And if you recall, last year we asked council for additional money to outsource demolition, extra $250,000. We did it. It worked well. We're asking for it again in this budget. We're not asking to increase it because we feel that was a good pace, but we got down over 40 properties. Those are the addresses. Those are what was, in fact, demolished this year. And then next year, we are proposing another 42 properties. That's the priority list. That was compiled by Dave Patton in consultation with our Public Works demo team. It should be noted, and he would note that, they reserve the right to, change it a little bit if we have emergencies and other projects that have to be taken down. But if all things being equal, that's the priority list. That's what they would take down in 2019. And if you have questions about that, you can study that and then get back when we have our hearings. So that is it. As you know, we are planning 2 budget hearings for December 11th and the 12th. I'll mainly just put that out there for the public's benefit. And presumably you will provide us, as you have in past years, with questions that we can answer in advance. And then I will make available all department heads and other management employees that you wish to hear from. And we'll have 2 good nights of conversation, hopefully anticipating a final budget passage then in December 18th. And I will just note in closing that this will be our final budget under, hopefully, if all goes well, under Act 47. And it's sort of a transitional budget because it'll then set the groundwork for what will be our spring project, which will be the development with you of a new 5-year plan for budgeting under the new state act and the new Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority. So it's a transitional budget in a lot of ways. It represents a sort of maximizing of capacity. I think a good point to begin the next chapter for the city's history. So thank you for listening, and look forward to answering all of your questions regarding the proposed budget.
Does anyone have any questions, council members, at this time? Or would you rather wait to see if your questions? Okay, Mr. Allen.
Several things. Are you planning on
I'm
producing
sorry, the mic wasn't on.
a capital improvement plan as requested?
We are proposing, we have your capital improvement list for this year.
That's
and
not a
then we are
capital improvement plan.
Yeah, and we are going to work with you for a 5-year capital improvement plan as part of what we're going to do for the spring, as part of our new requirement for a 5-year plan for the new Intergovernmental Authority.
The question I have, I see that your actual year-to-date expenses right now are $56,289,513. That's as of 11/15. I would like an estimate on where we expect to end the year. If you could get that out as we were looking at questions, I want to put that out there right away. The second thing that I'd like to know is the estimation on what our general fund balance will be at the end of the year. So if you could send those 2 things out to everybody in council as we prepare questions back, I
I'm
would
sure we
appreciate
can do
it.
both of those. That's no problem.
And that's all I have right now.
Ms. Bowers, anything?
No, thank you, not immediately.
Ms. Green?
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Mr. Mattson?
None for me, thanks.
Ms. Daniels? No. Mr. Majors?
No question at this time, but I would encourage our council members to just, to take a good look at this reorganization plan. I think that, removing our economic development director and having a real advocate for the city we may need to have someone in that position. So that's one of the things that, as you know, we're going through the budget, just take a look. It's no knock on anyone that's doing their jobs currently, but you know, having a good advocate for the city of Harrisburg to help us bring in businesses is something that I think is important. So that's my only comment right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Majors, and I concur with you. I think I spoke to the mayor about the reorganization plan. I do have some concerns about the reorganization plan, but I will share that with you when I submit that to the Budget and Finance Chair. Anything else, council members?
Do you want me to address process right now or save that to the end?
You can save that to the end. Okay. Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Moving on to communications, courtesy of the floor. Anyone at this time would like to come? I'll start at my right, in the middle, my left.
Good evening. My name is Evelyn Hunt, and I live in the 1800 block of State Street. I only have two questions for the mayor. The list of buildings that are scheduled to be demolished this year, would someone from the public be able to see that list? There is a property that I'm very interested in seeing come down. The city has had an X on it for 3 years, and I don't believe if we have a real bad snow this year like we did last year, will it remain standing. The other thing is the list that you had about the alleys that have been repaired. Is that also something that the public could see?
I can easily address that. I'll just say that, yes, we'll put the entire budget presentation PowerPoint up on the website, and that'll clearly list it. And then if you have questions about any alleys that maybe you think should be on the list or any properties that you think should be on the list, feel free to bring them to my attention or come to the hearing and speak to either Dave West or Dave Patton, and we can get you answers for why the list is what it is.
Okay. The one alley that I'm speaking of, your public works people have been very good about every year going in and patching it, but this has gotten to the point that it's going from being a pothole to almost a sinkhole.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to my left? Hearing none. Thank you. We'll move on with the agenda. Approval of minutes. Approval of the legislative session minutes of November the 13th, 2018. Are there any deletions, corrections, or omissions, council members? Hearing none, minutes will stand as approved. Moving on to reports of committees. Report from Chair Majors on the public hearing of November the 20th, 2018. Mr. Majors, are you ready with your report?
Yes, I am, President Williams.
Thank you.
On Tuesday, November 20th, City Council held a public hearing to discuss Bill 13 of 2018, an ordinance vacating and striking from the official map of the City of Harrisburg numerous unnamed paper streets within the block bounded by McClay Street, North 7th Street, Pfeffer Street, and Multi Alley, pursuant to Chapter 3, 109 of the Codified Ordinance of the City of Harrisburg. Speaking on behalf of present at the hearing was Jeff Bernerberg of McIlfred, D. Dono, and Mox LLC, who is the main contact for the project, and Mr. Ralph Vartan of the Bernardi Trust, who owns the property. We had a spirited discussion with the administration and members of council regarding the plans, as we know that is a potential site for a auto zone, but we wanted to try and stick to ensuring that we discussed what was before council, which was the striking from the official map those paper streets. The administration has suggested that we talk to the AutoZone about getting some site plans ahead of City Council moving forward with striking the streets from the official map. We had Mr. Bernerberg available for the hearing, and we asked him if he would be able to reach out to AutoZone to facilitate a discussion between the administration and council and AutoZone on the potential site plan before City Council move forward. He suggested that he would be willing to reach out, but did not provide us with any certainty on whether or not such a conversation would occur ahead of the City Council moving forward on taking a vote on Bill 13. From that discussion, there was talks about developing a policy for the future about how we handle street vacations in the city of Harrisburg, since we know that if they move forward, anything that that area is currently zoned for, they'd be able to move forward by right. So with that, we ask that the bill be placed on the voting agenda for the December 18th City Council legislative session. And we are currently still working to hope that we'll be able to have a conversation with the AutoZone and the property owner, as well as the administration, on moving forward. So came out of my committee with no recommendation on whether or not to approve or deny to vote in favor or against the recommendation. But we will currently be placing on the agenda, and we hope to hear from all parties involved prior to a vote. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Majors. Moving on to report from Chair Williams on the work session of November 20th, 2018. The Administration Committee held a committee meeting under the work session on November 20th, 2018. The article of legislation was Resolution 86, 2018, and that resolution was ratifying and approving the 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement between the City of Harrisburg and Local 521, which is American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, District Council 90, which is ASME. Shanna Williamson, Esquire, from the law firm of Elliott, Greenleaf, and Dean, was present on behalf of Mr. Jack Dean, who was the labor negotiator for the City of Harrisburg. This union contract is a 2-year extension of the existing 2-year contract in place with amendments. The amendments are a 1% wage increase each year, $1,000 signing bonus for all full-time employees as of December 31st, 2018, and they must be employed by the city each January of the corresponding years 2019 and 2020 to receive that year's bonus. Employees on a probationary status are not eligible to receive the bonus. Also, a 2.5% multiplier on the pensions, which is a combination of years and service that add to a total of 80 with the multiplier. And lastly, if the Commonwealth agrees to pass the Act 47 exit plan, an agreement exists in place to reopen the wage reopener to meet and renegotiate in 2019 wages for the City of Harrisburg employees for 2020. And that is the end of my report for ASME bargaining contract. Moving on to report from Chair Allett on the work session of November 20th, 2018. Mr. Allett, are you ready with your report?
I am, thank you. Also for discussion during that work session was Resolution 87 of 2018, which is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a collection agreement with the Harrisburg School District for the collection of the business privilege and mercantile tax and the amusement tax for the 2019 tax year. This is a resolution we pass annually. There's actually no changes this year. It's something that has been ongoing, for quite some time. So I urge my colleagues to vote in the affirmative of this, as there's not any real changes to the present state of things for it. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Allett. Moving on to report from Chair Mattson
Yes, in addition to the workshop we held on November 20th, we discussed Resolution 90 and 94. For the record, for Resolution 90, as chair, I requested an amendment to the resolution to remove the condition that the applicant submit a stormwater management plan, and the reason being, Planning Director Knights in his testimony stated that CRW and the city engineer agreed it was not necessary, and the project was in compliance with the zoning. And Resolution 94 was in compliance with zoning code and the Planning Commission, and I would recommend that my colleagues approve both measures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mattson. Moving on to ordinance for first reading. Bill 15, 2018. Mr. Petrosky, please read that into record.
Yeah, Bill 15 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Major, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's an ordinance amending Part 3 of Title 9 of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Harrisburg entitled Municipal Waste, Recycling, and Composting Code to improve efficiencies in the collection of residential and commercial municipal waste fees by instituting annual billing, to provide a discount period for early payment, and to provide a penalty for late payment.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Moving on to Bill 16.
Bill 16 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Allett, seconded by Ms. Bowers. It's an ordinance establishing the budget for the municipal government of the City of Harrisburg for the year 2019.
Excuse me, that will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to Bill 17. Bless you.
Thought that was a bottle rocket.
Wow. If anybody was asleep, you woke them up. Bless you.
Bill 17 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Allett, seconded by Ms. Bowers. It's an ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Harrisburg, Title 5, Licensing and Taxation, Part 5, Real Estate Taxes, Chapter 5-501, Property Tax, by establishing for the year 2019 and tax levy on land improvements, and providing for distribution of tax levied and assessed, and providing for a tax rebate for the difference between the tax due and attributable to year 2019, tax levy over tax due and attributable to the year 2006, tax levy for qualifying senior citizens.
That also will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. We now move on to ordinance for amendment. We have none. And we move on to ordinance for final passage. We have none as well. We move on to resolutions. Resolution 86, 2018. Mr. Petrosky, please read that into record.
Resolution 86, 2018 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Ms. Bowers. It's a resolution ratifying and approving 2019-2020 collective bargaining agreement between the City of Harrisburg and Local 521, American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, District Council 90.
Are there any questions or comments on Resolution 86, council members? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 86 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 87.
Resolution 87 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Madsen, seconded by Ms. Green. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a collection agreement with Harrisburg School District for the collection of the business privilege and mercantile tax of the amusement tax for the 2019 tax year.
Any questions or comments on Resolution 87, council members? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 87 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 90, 2018, as amended.
Resolution 90 of 2018, as amended, was moved by Mr. Madsen, seconded by Ms. Daniels. It's a resolution approving the preliminary final subdivision and lot consolidation plan submitted by Bonnie Forey to subdivide a portion of the property at 1715 Mulberry Street and consolidate and subdivide portion with the property at 205 South 17th Street.
Any questions or comments, council members? Well, I do have a comment. I'm concerned about what's going to be the usage for that property that the individual is going to subdivide, and I certainly will be looking out in the future to find out exactly what is her intention. So I just want to put that on record to make sure that she understands that I will be certainly watching what she does with that property at 1715 and then the subdivided portion at 205 South 17th Street. Please call the vote, Mr. Petrosky.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
No.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
No.
Resolution 90 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 93.
Resolution 93 of 2018 was moved by Ms. Daniels, seconded by Ms. Green. It's a resolution ratifying a contract with All Year Sports Galaxy LLC for the rental of an ice rink and related equipment for the City of Harrisburg's second annual Ice and Fire Festival.
Any questions, comments, council members? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers?
Yes.
Ms. Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 93 passes.
Thank you. Moving on to Resolution 94.
Resolution 94 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Madsen, seconded by Ms. Green. It's a resolution approving the preliminary final land development plan submitted by Brian Zaver to construct a commercial parking lot at Wildwood Drive, L2 and 2A, tax parcel ID number 10-071-100.
Any questions or comments on Resolution 94, council members? Hearing none, please call the vote.
Mr. Allett?
Yes.
Ms. Bowers? Ms.
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Ms. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Madsen?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 94 passes.
Thank you. Please read Resolution 95, please.
Resolution 95 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's a resolution approving the third addendum to assignment amendment and restatement of municipal waste disposal agreement of the City of Harrisburg and the Lancaster County Solid Waste Management Authority.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Moving on to Resolution 97.
Resolution 97 of 2018 was moved by Ms. Williams, seconded by Mr. Mattson. It's a resolution in accordance with Chapter 2-307, Section 2-307.7B4, substitute and salary ranges for non-represented exempt management title positions contained in Schedule A of the codified ordinances of the City of Harrisburg.
That will be placed in Administration Committee. Moving on to Resolution 98.
Resolution 98 of 2018 was moved by Ms. Green, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution approving the 2019 municipal domestic animal protective services agreement with the Humane Society of Harrisburg area to provide services to the City of Harrisburg's animal control program.
And that will be placed in Public Safety Committee. Moving on to Resolution 99.
Resolution 99 of 2018 was moved by Mr. Allett, seconded by Ms. Williams. It's a resolution approving the fifth proposed 2018 budget reallocation.
And that will be placed in Budget and Finance Committee. Moving on to Resolution 100.
Resolution 100 of 2018 was moved by Ms. Bowers, seconded by Mr. Madsen. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services contract with Steve Zimmerman to provide access and service of the city's historical mainframe programming, operations and related services in the Bureau of Information Technology.
And that would be placed in Building and Housing Committee. Moving on to Resolution 101.
Resolution 101, 2018 was moved by Mr. Majors, seconded by Mr. Allett. It's a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to renegotiate, and enter into a services contract with Penn Waste Incorporated to continue to serve as the city's single-stream recycling disposal service.
That will be placed in Public Works Committee. Moving on to old business, council members. Anyone have any old business? And I do. I'm sorry. I have two things. Well, one's for old, one's for new. And I've already discussed this with the mayor. I gave him a heads up. On Sunday, November 25th, 2018, while home reading the article written by Ms. Christine Vendel regarding plans for the AutoZone advance in Harrisburg, I was a little troubled by the statements made by the mayor of this city. In the article, the mayor stated he would like to see multi-use development in that area, but anyone familiar with that business strip knows that the area is zoned industrial and definitely not zoned for housing or other projects of that nature in this section of the city. It was also mentioned that council has no leverage over the appearance of AutoZone. I would like to clarify that comment. AutoZone Corporation is willing to upgrade the landscape. They're willing to change the colors, and they're eager to hear any requests that we may have in the design or the development process. The buildings in the surrounding area are all one-level buildings, which are in line with the AutoZone structure being considered. None of the businesses have two structures or more. Council Madsen and myself met with Mr. Vartan to further inquire about the design process and the required amount of parking spaces, the lighting concerns that were mentioned, and what future projects he is looking to undertake that would increase the property value and certainly have a positive impact on our city. I have made a request to the Corporation of AutoZone at the work session on November the 20th, 2018, to contact the residents in that area and answer and address concerns that they may have. Now, development in that vicinity for over 5 or 6 years has not existed. With the AutoZone structure, it will certainly benefit the residents who would have access to an automobile retail supplier in the uptown section of Harrisburg, along with 100% taxes of additional revenue for this city of Harrisburg. I personally welcome AutoZone as a partner with the city, and I hope they are successful in their venture. So I just wanted to make that statement because I received several calls regarding that statement that was made in the paper. Is there any other old business, council members? Is there any new business, council members? Yes. Mr. Alec?
So in terms of the process for budget hearings going forward, for those that are new, welcome to your first budget season. We will do budget hearings on December 11th and December 12th, beginning at 5:30 here in council chambers. In advance of that, I'd ask my colleagues to submit questions to the city clerk no later than noon on Wednesday, December 5th. That's a week from tomorrow. In terms of guidance, I mean, obviously you guys can ask any questions that you want. However, I often encourage you to give particular focus on the areas, particularly in the committees that you serve, to delve into that in a little bit more depth. But also, particularly as we look at the budget, I'd ask you to really look at the kind of year-to-date numbers of where we've been, how much the city spends, and look at that for revenue projections going forward. And then certainly you take care to understand the money that is being allocated for each of the things and our degree of comfort moving forward with that. We are moving to a new phase of budgeting, at least in my tenure on council, which means that we're moving beyond the Act 47 phase. So we have a greater responsibility as stewards of the taxpayers' money to put forth a budget that is responsible. So I just encourage everybody to take this process very seriously. In terms of how the hearings will go, as in years past, obviously there has to be some flexibility because sometimes we get into some topics that take a little bit longer. But on December 11th, the plan will be to go over the questions and answers that we've sent to the administration in advance of the meetings. And then we will move to covering the public safety area for that first night. On the second night, we will review anything we may have missed from the first night, and then we will cover the Department of Administration, Public Works, and any other departmental areas that we need to cover as part of the budget process. City Council shall consider passage of the 2019 budget at the final legislative session of the year, which will be on December 18th. So that is what I have for everybody here.
You meant to say noon, December 5th, instead of November the 5th.
Oh, I did say November 5th. Sorry.
Yes.
Yep, noon, December 5th.
Okay.
Sorry, but that is
Okay.
correct. Questions due noon, December 5th.
Okay. Any other new business, council members? Okay. I'm on the spot again. This is an issue that I was informed of, and I wanted to address this to the administration. It was the proposal of an affordable project in the 6th Street corridor that was denied by the former Director of Economic Development and also by Jeffrey Knight. NRP Group had contacted employees in the city of Harrisburg in the Economic Development Department to submit a proposal to construct a 40 to 50 unit for affordable housing that would address the need that is nationwide for safe, clean structures and affordable for those individuals who are limited because of their income, or maybe because of the occupancy not available, or even because not qualifying for a tax program. On October the 16th, 2018, a presentation was given to this council and addressed the Harrisburg Housing Demand Study. And out of that study, it was noted that 63.5% of households are renters. Also, that there's an estimated demand for 244 additional units needed over the next 3 years in Harrisburg. The city is targeting upper-income households within the downtown area. But in the uptown area, no rental projects are scheduled. So this would have been an incredible need for the affordable housing for the residents of the city of Harrisburg. Now, my question is to this administration. Why was the NRP group proposal not considered? And please don't answer today, because I want you to do an investigation, and I want you to get back with me with the answers. But to any developer looking to partner with the city, please feel free to contact City Council and request to speak to Chair of Building and Housing, Danielle Bowers, or the Chair of Economic Development, Dave Madsen. I am upset that we did not get the project at 6 and Minnick Street, because certainly we need housing affordable for our residents in this city. But we will not miss another opportunity. Thank you. And that's all I have for new business. Anything else, council members? Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Work session for next week.
Pardon me?
The work session for next week.
Okay, you announced the work session?
Yeah, we have a work session next Tuesday. Is that December 4th?
December the 4th?
5:30 here in council chambers.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, council members? Have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.